Hello, everyone, and welcome to Truth Proof. And how are you doing, Les?
I'm doing fine, Paul. Yep, doing fantastic.
Absolutely, and we've got a great guest lined up tonight. I'm really pleased. And Steve Mera, I don't think I'm going to have much to do, really. I love it when Steve's on because he can. It's not an insult, but he can talk for England, and it's all good stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it. And but before we jump to Steve, have you had a busy week?
Yeah, well, as you know, Paul, we did a recording with the great Ron Moorhead earlier on this week, and that should be going out Monday, and that's really something to look forward to.
Do you know, I seriously, when it comes to the subject of cryptids, and I don't know, I think Steve will probably echo this, his name is kind of the benchmark of the sense talking element of the cryptid phenomena, because he's had the experiences, but he's not just got himself entrenched when everything's a Bigfoot, everything's a Sasquatch. It were an honour to speak with him, I'll be honest with you. I really enjoyed speaking with him.
It certainly was. And the amount of years that he's been involved in the research, what is it, over 50 years?
Absolutely, yeah. 1971 that he recorded the Sierra Sounds. But before we jump to Steve, and let's just have a look in chat. We've got over 100 people in here already. See, Dave Barker's in, Patrick Daniel. I shouldn't say it, but I am saying it. Patrick Daniels had one of the most incredible encounters at Bempton. Encounters, sightings, I don't know what you'd call it, but it were great. And then Grandma, Karen Behrman, or Behrman, I'd say it every time. Bob, Welsh Rebel, Magsu, Steve 71. Let's have a look. DM Moon's son, Ian, Jonathan, I think Linny's in. And Annie French Boynton, Ken Wilkinson, good to see you, Ken, Matthew Cook, Susan Wiseman, and Jen and Andrew, we're never going to get through these names. I think Mrs. Lynn is in, Mia Girl, Alienate UK, and Zeno, good to see you, Zeno. I think you're going to conference. There'll be a few people in here I've seen. Carl Dan's going to conference.
Definitely.
So it'd be good to meet up with Dragonborn. It's great to see you. And yeah, absolutely brilliant. We've got to stop, haven't we? We've got
I see Alison and Lee's in the room.
Before we do that, just because I always like to get this part of it over with, but Steve Mera, as you know, we're talking to, is author, freelance journalist, international lecturer. Fancy being able to say that, but he's been all over the world, sort of talking and being used as an advisory for the subjects of the unexplained. And what a position to be, and really looked into the sort of deepest, darkest corners of unexplained phenomena. So he's also organising, along with Barry Fitzgerald and Camilla, and I hope I've not missed any names out, the up-and-coming Awakening Conference on Saturday, which I'm thrilled to be speaking at, as is Linny. So I don't know, and you'll be there, Les?
Yeah, I'll be there. So meet and greet time for anybody who wants to shake my hand. I'm available.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's bring Steve in, Les. Hiya, Steve. How are you doing?
Hi, guys. I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Thank you. And as I say, I know myself and Les are looking forward to Saturday, and so as a load of other people, because there's the shortage of conferences in UK, and thanks to you guys.
I'm looking forward to it. It's and the weather's good as well, so can't complain. But it's been a long time coming, and but we made a little bit difference in regarding how we're going to be running the events from now on. And that is that it's not based on who you are. It's not based on if you've been on TV shows. It's about the quality of the information. People are changing, Paul, aren't they? People want the good stuff. They don't want to keep hearing the regurgitation of something over and over again. And you know what? It's become a bit static. People want something new. They want to hear the latest things. So that's what's going.
It's absolutely spot on. I'm not even going to say what Linny's talks about, but I listened to it this morning, mid-morning. First time I'd listened to him go through it, and it got better. And I'm not just saying it got better. I told him that at the end. But no doubt Les will be hearing that on Saturday. But Les, are you going to hit us with a few questions? If you think there's any that's appropriate, Les, don't wait till 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we'll get them on screen. Yeah, and I'll see you a bit later, guys.
Okay, mate. You take care. So, let's just jump into it. Where's the research taking you now? Are you on a different path to when we last spoke?
Well, you know what? You like you, Paul. It's forever changing, because the phenomena likes to deliver this many things in various ways, very challenging sometimes, even to the point where becoming very sick now in some locations. We know that it's got to be related to what we're doing in that location. And for the whole team to come down really, really, I mean, terribly ill. I mean, I as an example, mine started, I went completely deaf. And I mean, completely deaf. I lost all my hearing. And that happened probably about halfway through, just after visiting the location on the first time. And I lost all hearing. And that was a horrible, horrible thing. And literally had to learn sign language in a sense of speaking, because I couldn't understand anything anybody was saying.
So everybody in the team became ill?
Everybody, yeah, we all did. Barry did, Carmela did, I did. We were leveled, completely leveled. But you know, the research has taken us into lots of different areas. But you know, we want to get out of the theorization about the word portals. I mean, I hate the word because there's a lot of fantasy it's attached to the name, as you know, with films and TV shows, you know, and I don't like the name, you know, but there is no better name to name it, really, to be honest with you. But it's not just about theorizing. We want to get some evidence to support these things are physically real. And it's about giving that evidence, you know, and now we're actually obtaining it. So you know, it's interesting times, because we have to focus on one particular thing because it's so vast, there's so much going on. It's easy to get diverted. But
it's difficult though, isn't it? Don't you think it's difficult? Yeah. I don't mean don't focus on one particular thing, because that's the route you're going on. But it's difficult because it tends to take you down different paths, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And like where you started with this thing, Steve, I don't know how many years ago, a long time ago, a lot of years ago, where you were then to where you are now. Did you think, I can't imagine that you thought you would be trying to open the doors that you're trying to open now to where you were to 20,
you
30
are
years.
right. Yeah, I mean, my mentors back then, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of them have passed away now because they were quite elderly then, you know. So, but my mentors were saying, look, you know, it's quite simple. Paranormal phenomena is the deceased, which are coming back and interacting with people. Not quite the situation that UFOs are, you know, coming from they're traveling the vast distances of space to come here to planet Earth in exotic craft with maybe exotic engines. And they've been doing this for quite some time. Well, we kind of know that's not quite everything that I learned back then is gone straight in the bin, buddy. You know, I mean, it's just because you have to move on and you learn stuff.
And it kind of made us, as in people interested in the subject of UFOs, men, women, of all ages, when coming out with that terminology, it made you the perfect target for science and academia, because they do all the calculations and the maths and say this isn't happening. These intelligences can't possibly be getting anywhere. Instead of just cutting them dead and saying they're already here. I don't know the means in which they're getting here. There's clearly some kind of firewall that's stopping us at the moment sort of penetrate. I mean, you might have it, you might know, but I don't. But they're already here, and
oh yeah, they've been here for a long time. And the fact is, I didn't expect that. You know, years back, I just went with the normal ruse, really, and it is a ruse. To be honest with you, it's a narrative that we've been focused on far too long. And now we're slowly moving out of those narratives because people are recognizing stuff. But you know what? I mean, I came into it. I mean, the subject of paranormal phenomena. I you know, I dipped my toe into that subject, and then I ended up one day getting a phone call from Manchester's Public Relations Office on behalf of the Ministry of Defence to conduct a confidential investigation for them regarding disturbances in one of their buildings. And when I did that investigation, what happened was I ended up on the Public Relations Office, whatever this is, but it's linked up to all these different companies and businesses. And a bit got hammered then, because there was quite a lot of companies, believe it or not, that wanted assistance in. They didn't want to contact a group or an organization. They wanted somebody that they could trust to be do it confidentially, a corporate investigation, and basically they become our clients, as opposed to the witnesses, because we're dealing with businesses sometimes which can be impacted by bad publicity and things happen like that. So, and we ended up doing work for Booth's Supermarket, Woolworths, believe it or not, Asda, Sainsbury's. It does go on. And many shops, many businesses, a Manchester City football ground, the old one, Main Road. They asked us to investigate that. There was lots of different things, and did that for about 16 years.
What did you discover that there were in many instances there was something very strange occurring, or were it a collective people just spooking each other in some instances?
Most of the time they'd already done the footwork. They wouldn't have reached out to us otherwise. That somebody had actually got enough information to support that this stuff was going on, and we discovered that in many of these locations. And it could be because it's a new build, or they've changed something, and they've upset the environment in some way, and there's been a kickback. And I had to interview witnesses, and of course those witnesses had to be put under some type of NDA, in a sense of speaking, because we didn't want this bad publicity to be out. And when investigating the first corporate case, we had about 30 investigators, and each and every one of us was posed as electrical engineers, hard hats, tool belts, going around and taking readings and measuring, because the company didn't want the staff to know who we were and what we were actually doing. So we're just doing a survey of the building, but really we're doing a paranormal survey of the building. So, and he was talking to them staff. They wouldn't work in certain areas of the building. They wouldn't work late neither, and it became a management situation, and they didn't know how to manage it, to be honest with you. So it was a matter trying to come in there, trying to arrange situations where it's easier for the staff, keep control of this so it doesn't get out to the press and leaks. Could be bad for the business, and try and figure out what the hell is going on. And on most of those incidents, most of those occasions, those investigations provided good conclusive data that yes, there was definitely some things going on in them.
It's fascinating, but I suppose the bottom line for the companies was that it were probably affecting productivity and profit. Well, even though there was something happening, so there were a valid reason for you being there, and that's proof in a way, isn't it? Getting you guys in.
It is, yeah. I mean, I was given at the time when I went into this Ministry of Defence building, which was the first corporate investigation. They had security officers, because it's a Ministry of Defence owned building, and they are 24/7. They are constantly there, but they switch over. So you got the day staff, and then they switch over for the night staff, and they have to have these handover notes to pass on to the next guys to see what's gone on during the day, sort of thing. First thing they did is they come into this office, and I'm sat down with a team of these managers and stuff and directors, and just drop these files, and they're literally like that, Paul. And this was all the recordings of visual phenomena written down by the security officers that were giving chase, thinking that people had broken in, only to see these things go right through the wall, and lots of weird and strange disturbances, things working of their own, strange sounds. These were all documented in these reports by the security teams. So that's where I first started, and then obviously interviewing them. But then it led into the staff, and them having some very traumatic experiences in certain parts of the building. And they'd said, "Look, I'm never working in that area again, or I'm never working late on. In winter it gets dark in the UK, as you know, or, and they get a bit uneasy. So it was a managerial problem which they couldn't seem to resolve. So we kind of helped deal with that.
Did you ever resolve the actual, the haunting, the poltergeist, the apports, the spirit?
We didn't resolve in the way of causing the phenomena to cease, but we did decrease the activity. There was a huge amount of EMF in that environment, and it was technologically generated through just basically the way that they've designed the offices, because the building was acting as a massive antenna, huge girders coming up from the ground. There was water underneath the building. The whole thing was alive with EMF. So we basically had to sort of have guys come in and check out thoroughly about bonding on electrical piping systems, making sure that the EMF levels are in the normal parameters. Some of them well exceeded it for long durations of time, which is not good for staff. It's going to cause them the jitters, because EMF in those locations will have adverse effects on people. So it doesn't help that they're already in that mindset because they're feeling something. So we just had to, but we did lower the amount of incidents that were being reported. I don't know if it's just generally that was the case, that they were less, or they were just people that we reinforced that everything that makes a bang isn't a ghost, you know what I mean? So
do you
lower it.
Do you think, Steve, that the actual person's mindset when they begin having these experiences dictates, in some instances, the outcome or how it develops? As in, you know, if you go into it, I don't know, in a good mood, if that's even possible, and feeling positive, then you might have a positive experience with the phenomena. Or do you think that would have got entirely? We've got malevolent phenomena, and we've, you know,
I think you'll know as well as this, Paul, that dealing with the phenomena is a lot easier than it is dealing with people. You know, and trying to tell people not to be scared because, you know, you're going to have some form of reaction to this, even psychologically. It's difficult dealing with people. You can't tell people not to be scared. If you're crying out loud, I mean, they're going to be. You know, it's your natural instinct to do so. So, what I was trying to consider is that how do we control the environment first in regarding the people in it? You know, because if there are disturbances taking place there, they were taking place there when the staff weren't there, because they were being monitored by the security teams. They were being caught on CCTV camera, many strange things, you know, and we had balls of light. Now, the balls of light were probably around about the size of a bowling ball. So just a bit smaller than a football size. And there were two of them, always seen in the pairs. And they were seen visually by people and also recorded on CCTV camera. But what was interesting is that they'd take very intelligent maneuvers down corridors and then into an open door and a sharp left turn into a room and stuff like that. And you think to yourself, you know, that's intelligent. That's intelligent movement. And then I started thinking, I thought, well, do you know what? That's not very dissimilar to some of the balls of light that people saw in the sky over Mexico City during the 1990s. And I started thinking, okay, so I wonder if there's a connection between these. Are these? It's an unidentified flying object inside a building in a small sense. So it's very messy, doesn't it? You know, these. And then I realized the problem here is the compartmentalization. This is paranormal. That's ufological. And they don't, and never mix the two together, you know what I mean? But no, we can't do that anymore, you know.
No, absolutely. When did you start seeing that shift? Because there's definitely a shift. I mean, you will get people who died in the wool and it's knock on side of it and it's a nuts and bolts UFO. But I think a lot of people are coming around to thinking, there's too many bleed throughs into the phenomena, the mind speak, the clairvoyance, all of these things, the abduction scenario where they speak into your mind. There's been a shift, hasn't there? Definitely, I think
massive shift. I mean, it's quite exciting times actually. We are now living at the time when the narrative's changing, and now the people keep going, oh well, we've had the same narrative for 60, 70, 80 years. It's longer than that. If you want to go back to the early 1900s with the Aurora crash in Texas, that narrative was there then. So it's well over 100, 120 years, maybe even longer. You know, that narrative has been there for such a long time, but it's exciting now because we're living at this moment in time. I didn't think it was going to happen, but terminologies are changing. The new narrative is coming forward. We're not using ETs anymore as a reference. They're using NHI, which is interesting. And then we're not using extraterrestrials anymore. We're using interdimensional phenomena. So there's a shift taking place even at the highest level.
You know, you just jumped on the word I was going to say at the higher level. Why do you think that shift is? Do you think that it's at a higher level they realize that they can't keep the lid on this anymore?
You are, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it's years ago we can say, okay, all right, but eventually you're going to say, hang on a second, it's a bit of a big pill to swallow this, because where's the evidence to back up what you're claiming? We've been at the old extraterrestrial hypothesis for years and years. But now you've got specialists going forward. You got NASA, even Arrow, which is the Pentagon UFO program. are saying that these things, we don't seem to have evidence that they're extraterrestrial in the way we think. So we got to change the process of thinking. And if you go back to the 60s, I think one of the first guys was John Keel. It said, you know what? I don't think it's extraterrestrial. That was then followed by what was his name? Well, there was Jacques Vallée. It came in, and then Hynek in between in 1977. Project Blue Book number 14. I had a specialized meeting, and in that meeting, he said, "Do you know what? I don't think it's extraterrestrial." Of course, he got shunned for that, so he left and ended up working with Vallée for a few years. But Vallée had the same thing, and he got shunned for this opinion that it might not be extraterrestrial in origin because it causes too much problems. We could wrap our heads around understanding extraterrestrials, but trying to wrap our head around something else, that starts to get a bit tricky.
I think we'll wrap our heads around a question here, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for all your questions, guys. And I want to stay ahead tonight because I like to get all the questions out. What come in from you people on the stream? The question from Lee Roscoe. Question, Steve, can you tell the truth proof us where most of the UFOs are seen? And it's a double question. What have we gold ticket holders in? What you got in store for us on Saturday at the Awakening?
Well, there's two different types of tickets, which is for the event. We have the standard and we have the ultimate. The ultimate includes a special presentation called Off the Record, and it is kind of off the record. It's strictly no filming. We're going to be showing some things which is quite, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it's it's got some real critical things in there that has been captured, and the data, which is, and I mean evidential stuff, and that's what we need. We need evidence, because we'd just be another person saying we think there might be a portal there. But what evidence do we have of them actual being real and physical in our reality? That's where it starts getting interesting, And I know you've touched on a couple of these things as well, Paul. But so I'm not going to give too much away. But that's a special event regarding our transition to Spain and the Pyrenees Mountains through Project Doorway, and where it ended up, which is you would never believe, So that's interesting. The normal, the standard ticket, you've obviously got a series of number of lectures throughout the day. But like I say, each and every lecture is a heart stopper. It really is. I look at all the other events that are going on around the world, and there's so much data crammed into these presentations. It's just like overload. But that's what we want to do, because we want to provide the latest information, not just ours, but other people's and yourselves, Paul. So, and that's what we want to do. We want to let people know, you know what? We don't have to talk about bloody Roswell anymore. And still there's documentaries and things coming out and they're still talking about it now. And I think, you know what? Please, no more. I don't need to know anymore. It's too, it's gone. Let's move on, because the world is transitioned into various stuff that are new meanings about this phenomena now. So we need to deliver that, because we need to bring people up to speed of where we currently are. And then they'll start to get a better understanding that the subject doesn't have to be static. It's just that we have to investigate it with kind of a different opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just coming with Ian Linney and Falaise. Are you coming to shake my hand? Well, Linney, you have a firm hand grip there, so just be gentle with me. That's all I'm saying.
Crush his hand, Les. Just crush his hand.
Yeah. And staying on with Ian. For Steve, what's your thoughts on red light face transfiguration?
Well, you know what? I come across quite a lot about this, and I've rationalized a lot. I've had so many dodgy things in the past where it's just been a camera effect and the blurring process, or they've slightly moved. And, but you know what? I always ask those important questions when I'm getting photographs. Well, where's the one that took after it? Where's the one before? I want to see a series of photographs you've taken. Don't just
Just before we leave this, and I'll fill this in what Linney means, because I realise that you probably think he's on about something else. On occasion, in the darkness, we've fixed a red light on a subject, a week, red light on a subject on the cliff tops, and a group of people from 4 to 8 people have observed. And we're coming back, not like some kind of mass hysteria, but we're seeing similar things, and we're making notes and not just talking about it at the time. We wait until the session's over, and I think that's what he's on about there. Have you done that?
Right. Well, you absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen it for myself, and it actually happened to a gentleman I know who was a lecturer, and he was lecturing at the time. And what was very interesting, though, about this, Paul, is that I had a number of friends in the audience which are academics, and literally 12 people out of 80 saw it, not connected with each other. 12 people in the audience saw it.
And did this man's initials start with F and end with W?
Yes, I was there. Yeah. And that means then it's down to the individual or the phenomena is reaching out. It's not something normal that we would perceive, because you'd have to say, well, why do 68 people not see it and 12 do, for an example? You know, so that's what makes it profound. Yes, I'm aware of that, and yes, it can happen. But you know what? I think it's tied directly with the human perception and the phenomena.
Yeah.
You know, and that does happen. In regards to experiments, though, with cameras and stuff, I've not seen enough evidence for me to support the fact that, you know, that these experiments that they're doing in that area proves that, you know, people can cause that effect. It's like the old gazing, mirror gazing, you know, and people used to take photographs years ago during this process and believe that they could, you know, transfigure their face to somebody else's face. You know, it's an old theory and stuff, but like I say, you know, always looking for the evidence, but I do know it exists. Absolutely. Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
Okay. Steve Collin, Steve, was the Manchester City about the Gypsies case on Main Road?
Yeah, it was, yes.
Yeah.
And Manchester City themselves reached out for us to conduct a corporate investigation for them. And it sounds a bit stupid, but the cleaners were witnessing things. You know, when they clean up the ground after a match, it's pretty messy. People drop stuff all over the place. Massive cleanup operation goes on. It goes on for hours after a football match, as you can imagine. And the cleaners were witnessing things, shadow figures and that sort of stuff. The ground itself, you know, has a history, you know. Now, the story has it that it was a gypsy ground and we had to moved and relocated for the build of Main Road, Manchester City ground. There's more to it than that. You know, the whole area. I mean, look at the energies that are involved. You know, if you're going to bring in between 50 and 100,000 people at a football match, your energies are rife, aren't they? They really are. And we know phenomena is really targets, you know, high areas of energy. So I think that was attributed. But you know what? They even went to, you know, superstitions of going and basically having a tinkle in the corner flag, because they thought, oh yeah, this might help. And I don't know where those ideas come, but I said, look, do you know what? That's not going to change anything, you know. But you know what? We did our report and we did some work for them, and they were happy. But it wasn't that long afterwards when they decided that the new ground was going to be built and relocate it and close down Main Road.
Okay, thank you.
This question might deserve time for a longer discussion, really. But Steve 71, Stephen Paul, do you feel like we are on an endless road where every small piece of knowledge gained just extends the road we're already on?
In my opinion, it seems to do. As we think we're making a bit of progress, it takes us by surprise, and off we go down another road, Steve-O. So, yeah, but let's get Steve's views on this.
It's exactly the same, Paul. It's always like that. I mean, we might look at phenomena in general, and we're targeting one specific area. Then, I mean, if we say, for instance, telepathic communication comes in various ways through various phenomena. Its terminology varies depending on what subject you're in. Transplacement in parapsychological terms is telepathy, you know, in other areas. But as soon as you start looking into that, and you have to look at the mechanism of how it's working. Then you get into paranormal mechanics, and that leads you to other things. So what happens is you start off with one thing and you end up on the result of 10 items. Then you look at one of them and that results into 10. How massive this mechanism is. Whatever the phenomena represents, we can truly say it's masterful. The mechanism behind it, the thinking behind it, even the mathematics sometimes behind it. You know, sometimes they run by a rule book in certain phenomena. Sometimes they'll produce all sorts of things that cause absurdity for you not to be able to categorize it because we ain't created a box called it. You know, and that's the problem. So yeah, it's always trying to be just one out of reach, but demonstrative, teasing, trickster. You know, and lots of things are environmentally linked to these things as well. So yeah, you are right. It's just forever expanding.
Absolutely.
Lee's got another question in, Paul and Steve. What do you think about water having something to do with the paranormal, and why would it have anything to do with the paranormal? Like Steve said about the Sunshine Building in Manchester.
Yeah, somebody knows what building that was. Yeah, because I didn't mention it. So yeah, but it's out. You see, because
somebody might have suggested that on the stream. Yeah.
Well, when we do a corporate investigation, we have to give them a CAP document. That's a confidentiality assurance policy, CAP, and it's for 10 years. And we have to, like, basically 10 years later write to them and say, do you still want it remained, you know, under the CAP document? If they say no, then we'll go public with it, you know, but we can't do it while it's under assurance. So that did eventually come out, you know, that first particular investigation, because it was owned by the MOD at the time. And then we got involved with Cortilla Properties, and that was the second one. So yeah, there's water does have a play on some things. I mean, in the 1500s, the way they used to write up in the 1500s, if you want to get rid of poltergeist, you'd cross a stream.
Yeah,
you know, to shed. It's called the shedding process. You know, and they believed it worked. But is it the power of belief that assists?
Assisting the power of the mind is actually far stronger than we realize. I mean, just briefly, the legend of Willie Howe and the Chronicle of William Newborough, when the hobs and the goblins chased the man across the fields, he jumped the gypsy race, which was running water, and they couldn't cross it.
That's it.
You know, similar things. I mean, how much is just fairy tale and how much is a grain of truth that there's something to this?
Yeah, you are right. I mean, you know, you might be that situation is, you know, I mean, people often, you know, many years ago, I mean, in the UK, there was about 486 moated manor buildings. Now, not all of them are moated. Some of them is literally 2 feet.
Yeah.
You could stride over it. So you think to yourself, why so much effort goes into moating a building when you can stride over the damn thing?
There's no protection at all, really. So what is that for?
Pointless. Yeah. So why did they do it? It might be for superstitious reasons, of course, you know. But yeah, definitely there's something to it.
And another illustration that's come to my mind, Stephen Paul, is that Skinwalker Ranch, where was it the first day the family was there? They had the big wolf come up to them, and when it eventually ran off after whatever it did or tried to do to the cattle, but as it got down to the river and where they chased it, it just disappeared.
Yeah, vanished, including its prints. It just as if it was just plucked out the air.
So you know, link with water there, isn't they? So,
I'm reading this. I'm a slow reader. The Grey Man.
Oh yes,
and there's an account in there of seeing footprints walking towards him, seeing the footprints, and then just seeing them disappear. And
there's a few people that have reported that in paranormal cases where they've seen footprints, watery footprints, you know, appearing as if something's walking along. You know, it's interesting, you know, but yeah, I think it's definitely something to water on many cases.
Ken, good to see you.
Yeah, Ken Wilkinson, please ask Steve, the main man, Mera, who or how paranormal phenomena became associated with EMF anomalies, which is the empiricism behind this. I can't pronounce that word. Yeah. You guys might do better than me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, basically it was accidental initially, and it's only because that certain equipment was brought in which was adversely being affected by something. And when we talk about EMFs now, because in the paranormal sense, you'll have ghost hunters or ghostbusters or teams out there, paranormal investigators, that really focus in on this, but they focus far too much in EMF. Because they think it's the start of something. I mean, initially, EMF was, it's the residue. We're picking up something. Maybe it's picking up the ghost, picking up the spirit. It isn't. It's nothing to actually do to picking up them. But it's an element of the phenomena. It's causing the EMF to be triggered. So, people start with EMF. Oh, yeah, I got this EMF, so there must be something there. But you have to go back a bit and say, well, hang on a second. What's causing the EMF? And we figured it out through experiments eventually, because in buildings where there are paranormal disturbances taking place, there are microgravity areas opening and closing. Now, back to this word again, Paul, portals. Are micro portals responsible for the deliverance of phenomena in buildings? Because when something got moved from one place to the other in a sealed room, which is locked off, and then suddenly all hell breaks loose in there, and you go in, you find your equipment is in a different location. That area of disturbance leaves a geological footprint, which is measurable by a gravitational disturbance, and it lasts only for a short period of time. But that gravitational disturbance is causes the spike in EMF. You see, so it's like going back one and saying, well, what causes the EMF? And that's when it started realizing that there's a lot more involved in the mechanisms, what's going on. Residue is left behind by disturbances, no matter what. If it's something that's moved across the table, if it's an apport, there's a disturbance, which is not a normal physicality, and it leaves footprints behind. But we didn't have things to measure gravity. Now we do. We even have time displacement meters. We've got all sorts of things that can tell us something's not normal in that environment. Something's changed. It's left a footprint behind, but it doesn't last for very long.
We said the dissipation. I suppose it varies on the strength of the activity. Then, does it? In your opinion? I know we can't know for sure.
We don't know for sure, but I mean, it's like sometimes they'll leave a radiation trace, but you know what? It's short-lived, and it shouldn't be, because according to the type of radiation. There's various different types, but according to the type of radiation, that should be present and long-standing. But it isn't.
Yeah.
So what's causing the radiation dissipation? That's interesting. So you go back again. What's causing the radiation dissipation? It's
when myself and Chris made Bringing Down the Light, Chris brought a Geiger counter from you, which you'd supplied us with a Geiger counter. We'd not got one at that time, and I took Chris to where some of these animals had been killed, if I'm saying it politely. And in one of the areas, it just went off the scale. I don't know if you saw that bit of footage, but it just went off the scale. But it didn't last. It literally did. You would, like you've just said, that affected area, you would think that the actual concentrated radiation would have been there much longer, but it wasn't. No. In a few days, it had gone.
Well, that's it. If you brought in a professional radiologist, they won't be interested at the fact that you got radiation there. They'll be really interested in, well, what caused its dissipation? Because it shouldn't, and this is what, you look at Chernobyl and places like that, you still can't go into areas like that now.
No.
It's so, there's pockets of activity which you've got to be careful about. But there is some clever toys out there now, including new types of meters, which will show you radioactive spots visually. Basically, it's on a screen. It's like looking through a camera lens, and it will light up in key areas where radiation is. What a fantastic piece of equipment. They've got to create these for people that have to go into Chernobyl and places like that.
Yeah, they use them in hospitals as well, don't they? It's a medical tool. Yeah,
amazing things though.
Okay, I've got a question from Zeno. Hi, Steve. Hope you're well. With the latest in consciousness, memory loss associated with the phenomena, etc., what are the chances where the same technology with its access to our minds and emotions? What are the chances where the same technology with its access to our minds and emotions?
Same technology with access to our minds and emotions. Well, to the phenomenon, we're puppets on a string. Don't ever think we're going to get one ahead on this. We're not. They can read our minds. They can see into the future. That's evidential.
Absolutely.
And they can create perception alteration to the point where they're even affecting our brains and we don't even know it, within 20 seconds. It could be even faster, but we know we can do it within 20 seconds now for the work that myself and Barry's done. And when they've got those cards in their hand, give it up, guys. Okay, all we can do is play their game, and let them see if they'll interact, and be good to get there at the time when we can capture that information. We are learning things. We are chipping away at the block all the time. Paul is, I am, many others. But like I say, there's no great leaps and bounds because the phenomena takes a step back. You start pressing it, it's going to take a step back.
Everything's on its terms, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
On Saturday, it's no secret, I'm going to talk about Hummingbee. And the guys never really saw what it was. Ultimately it crescendoed with a UFO, but for those 3 years with those interactions, they never saw what it was that was interacting. It was always it's a strangeness of it all that it wants your attention. It wants to poke you in the back, like Linny would say, because we get it up there. But it doesn't want to poke you from the front. It wants to make a crack to the right. So when you look to the right, it does it to the left. It wants your attention, but it must find it really amusing. It's a trickster element, isn't it?
It really is. And it frustrates the hell out of you because you can't fool this thing. If we are going to get video footage on photographs, because if you're watching it, the electrons are changing in it due to this double slit experiment. We now know that the electrons move differently and are affected through observation. So I believe they're aware that they're being observed through the electron disturbance, and they can put on a show for you, and they'll allow you to photo and video. It won't allow others sometimes, Paul. It depends if they like you. If you've been, are you part of the game? Have you been initiated? Yeah, okay, you're all right. You can do it. But to be honest with you, it's all on their terms because, I know people that said, I've never seen anything. And it's not because they're not interested, but it just works out that way, that some people are just cut a little bit differently when it comes to the phenomena.
You'll have done this, you, Barry, and a host of other people in chat. Let's assume you've got an area that you're involved in and you're looking in, because a lot of the time, this as well, people in chat do, you can spend hours in these locations. It's not performing every night, it's not performing every day, but sometimes you can take certain individuals and it ramps up. It's almost like you've just said, I like these people, whether it likes them or doesn't like them, but the word is I'm going to interact with these people because I don't know, they just tick a box.
It is, yeah, you're absolutely right. And that really is your first development of what everybody's talking about now is referred to as the psionic circle. The psionic circles now are made up of, and this is why they're getting better interactions, is because it's made up of people which are experiencers and observers. When they brought the scientists along, it was like, what? Nothing, not getting anything. Because the phenomenon doesn't like that sometimes, unless it wants to be really demonstrated, but it's very rare. Most of the time, it wants to play with those that it kind of already knows, in a sense of speaking. And that's where the development of psionic circles came in, when everybody seems to be talking about them now. But really, it's just CE5 when that was developed. And then you've got HEIS, But HEIS was a bit better than CE5 because it actually started picking out not just random people that I want to go on the CE5, but actually people which were experiencers and observers. So you got a better result. It's actually more controlled. But then obviously this is what the psionic circles are claiming to be, but in an official capacity. But you know what they're trying to do is allegedly bring down UFOs to the point where they can be jumped upon and attacked, by weapon systems. And there were two programs, Haystack and Interloper. Interloper, you can't really talk too much about Interloper. It's still quite secret. But Haystack, I mean, it was utilizing the military forces, waiting, just out of sight to see if they could do that. I don't think it really is about that. I think it's about if you are communicating with these things, because sometimes whatever these things are seem to be sentient, not as well as the things inside them, is that it's more an enticement, enticement, not forcing these things down, but it's an enticement.
But do you think, not in every instance, but do you think we're just dressing up with new names and it's like sexing up something that's ancient? Even I'm not deeply religious, but the power of prayer, it's connecting with a supernatural being. Buddhism, Hinduism, mantras, chants, meditation. I'm not saying that these new terminologies aren't right and they're not honing in on something, but it strikes me that it's something that people have been doing for hundreds of years.
They've been doing it for thousands of years. I mean, the thing is that the initial contact phenomena was ritualistic practices. And the ritualistic practices have been done in thousands of years ago. Some of that esoteric stuff and Enochian, Babylonian, there's a few different ones. It works. I guarantee it works. I've seen it work. And it's shocking, but it's not safe.
No,
it's not. It is like hammering at the door, and they don't like it. And it's not a good way to go about it. You have to ease into it. And that's why sometimes when you bring in a team of people together to conduct experiments, it takes a long time to create the right type of people, because just because you've got an academic there who's a bit of a cynic, you've got a weak link and your results will drop, and it's frustrating because, of course, we want scientists there, but as soon as a scientist comes along, sometimes he doesn't want to play ball. He'd rather play ball with somebody who witnessed the phenomena at an early age,
But because they're not believers, they know.
Yeah, it's a bit like faith apparitions, I think. You look at what people say. Oh, I saw the Virgin Mary or whatever. But you have to believe in religion to have that, or there wouldn't be a faith apparition. So it's like, do you have to believe in the phenomena for you to be experiencing the phenomena? It's like believing is seeing rather than seeing is believing.
Yeah. No, perhaps you do. And perhaps what you're believing shapes what you experience.
That's it.
Do you know? We could all ultimately have. Let's just jump back to religion. We could all be praying to the same God. We're just different cultures, just different ways of looking at it. I wish people could think like that, and there'd probably be a lot less anger.
It really would. But there are still people, hundreds and hundreds upon thousands of people out there across the world, which are praying to things which were not even described to initially as even being human.
No,
the holy caves, strange beings, and they thought, oh, let's call it a god, let's call it this name, and we'll go and worship it. And they're still going in the thousands. Lourdes, when Barry did his research about Lourdes, one of the most religious locations on the planet. It was Bernadette, saw this thing, and the Catholic Church wanted to come in and change it to the Virgin Mary. She saw it at the edge of a cave. Interesting, because there always seems to be a connection there to the ground, to cliffs, caves, whatever. But she was not. She said, "What is that?" She said, "I didn't see that." And in fact, in her own diary, she actually said that thing. That's what she called it. But no, they made her a saint, and now everybody goes there and worships the statue there of Virgin Mary, where the alleged apparition of Virgin Mary took place, which never happened. So what are you praying to at the end of the day? It's happening all over the world.
Let's
I'm just going to bring you back to what you said about the CE5 experiments that people go on, Steve, and you said it endears the phenomena endears it to people who've had experiences more than people who are just there. They might be scientists, they might have some other, but they're there because they're inquisitive. Would it not endear them eventually to these type of people, and not just people who's had experiences in their life?
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's something called the leeching phenomena. You might get this, Paul. What happens is that if somebody is enough in your environment, they leech It leaches over to them. It bleeds. It's a bleeding process. So in other words, if that community within your circle start to experience, because you've been the conduit unknowingly, but you are, you know, and this is what happens. And then they become, oh, suddenly I'm seeing things. And then it leaches and it connects. It's like a virus.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gathers, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah, and I'm only saying that because me, I'm open to everything, Steve, as Paul knows, and but I've experienced very little, and so if I went on a CE5 experimentation thing, because I'm open to this, would something then leach over to me?
It's not about, people used to think it's about being open. I've got to be more open. It's not. It's down to the phenomenon. It's not down to us. We think we can enhance ourselves. It's not. It's basically the phenomenon decides to interact with us, and that initiation process, if it chooses to, sometimes it might be that it wants something out of it in the long run. Otherwise, why would they bother? Look at, we got 7.6 billion people to pick from now, and they can be very, very fussy. But like I say, the best opportunity to have that bleeding process, the leaching process, that you're in the community with people long enough that it spreads to you, and then you kind of become initiated in that sense. It's a very same way it was written up in regarding spiritualism and witchcraft many years ago.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll move on with another question from John Alexander. Any thoughts on the recent weaponized whistleblower podcast? The notion we are a commodity, entertainment to the others. They have been here for at least all of recorded history.
Well, yeah, they've been here. They actually probably here before even documented history.
I was going to say far predating recorded history, I would think, John.
Absolutely. But the problem is, I think, in a sense of speaking, and it's a bit of a tricky thing to say, but how can I put it? It's like even the sense of God has been hijacked. We know this phenomena has no bounds, no limits. Capabilities are endless, seem to be, if you look at all the various different strange and profound things it's capable of doing. So you could even to say to the average individual, it's godlike. It's godly. It has godly qualities. Yeah.
Could be the Godhead.
In earlier days, that you're going to think that, but now we've got a little bit more of an idea about it. And we go, okay, well, it's something with godly power. Has it been misinterpreted? Because where does all the religion stuff from? The miracles in the Bible, many, many of them, is the phenomena responsible in some way, which gets pushed into that area of religion, it's got to be God. So we really do. It's a learning curve, but the problem is, we're dealing with religion here, and it's a very tricky situation, as you can well imagine. There's nothing stronger than belief, and there's nothing more worse than religions that causes war and death. So, at the end of the day, we've got to sort of be tiptoe through that area quite very carefully. But it does seem so. It seems like if you were to witness the phenomena, what its capabilities are, you'd think, wow, it's godly.
Absolutely. But are we a commodity? It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, people have said in recent years that they think the reports and the cases of human abductions via beings of unknown origin have dropped. Well, if we were a commodity and we were being primed and nurtured for something, well, maybe this does go in waves. And maybe in the 1960s and 70s, there was a lot of abductions. They needed to check the product, assuming we were a commodity, and we will come back in another 20 years. We're going to do it intermittently throughout that time, but we're going to come back and do it intensely in the 2000s. Or just thoughts when John said the word commodity there. I'd hate to think we were a crop, but you never know.
All right, yeah, I do think. I mean, you people will want to list the 1961 September Betty and Barney Hill, isn't it? It's probably one of the first documented. Well, that depends. If you read through ancient stuff and scriptures and stuff, you could say, well, this stuff has been going on. It's just been termed wrongly, or it's been termed right. And we've come up with a new theory, new names. I don't think it's something new. But one thing that puzzles me is we know our line of development and skills through technology in a short period of time has been tremendous. if these have been around all this time conducting experiments, surely they would have resolved it by now. So what is the reason? The reason to be able to why conduct experiments on human beings? If you've been doing it for thousands of years, surely you must know everything. What I think it is, it's about human development. I think, I wouldn't say for sure, of course, but it's a hypothesis that humans are being slowly developed and go through changes, and we're seeing more and more people being attuned to certain psychic abilities now than ever before, and is it just through upgrading? And what's causing the upgrade? Because you think through evolutionary process it'd take thousands upon thousands of years, but it's not. It's happening quite quickly.
Yeah, and Karen really follows on from what you just been saying there, Steve. Stephen Paul, do you think your intuition and or your senses have increased throughout the years with these interactions, or do you think it's just that you'll become more aware over the years?
Myself, I don't think that I wouldn't know from the younger years, Karen, but I'm always fairly aware, not just of my surroundings, but and I suppose this probably just I don't know, just it's kind of survival skills. You know when an atmosphere's off, if you're talking about your senses, when something's not right. You can sense these things. If you can walk into a room and if there's a happy vibe. I'm not sure if that's where you've tilted it, Karen, or if there's something seriously sort of wrong, and the mood of the room, you can feel it. If that's the way that you're tilting that question. I don't know what you think, Steve. I don't know whether I've changed, to be honest.
No,
I don't know.
I think you're right there, but I think it's also the fact that we are now better understanding what those feelings mean. We know, because when you get that feeling, and as well as I do, Paul, it's like the taste of a lemon. You don't ever forget the taste.
Oh yeah.
And when that happens to you, and your body alerts you to it, this is that mechanism that we all have. We might say the jitters, we can call it all these wonderful names, but it happens. It was first recognized by paranormal investigators. They suddenly go into one particular room to get the jitters. Something's going on in here. They know that, so they'd focus on that. But it's more than that. It's your body's natural survival sense going, something not quite right. Just because you don't see it, hear it, or whatever, doesn't mean it's not there. Yeah. And it's a natural body reaction to it. It's a survival sense kicking in. So you have to react to that. So you learn through the process of what these things mean and try and prepare yourself for it, because that mechanism's there for good reasons, because I know sometimes people have ignored that, and sometimes not had good experience.
And ignored it at the peril sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I mean, I was, the phenomena came knocking on my door when I was 7, and I was absolutely petrified, and this went on for a long, long time, but that was the start. Just one particular bedroom visitor one night started the whole world of this strange stuff. Never had it before then, but afterwards, all sorts of things, from small figures, balls of light, apparitions, UFOs, just crazy, crazy stuff. And it's continued through my life. But the process of that is that you do learn by that. And then you also kind of, when you're younger, you would evade that feeling. But Absolutely. As an investigator, sometimes you're looking for that to trigger.
Sometimes you crave those, not those situations, maybe not the feelings, but those situations. Yeah. You want to be there and immerse yourself in it, because I want to get to the truth. I'm not pretending that I'm ever going to get to it, but that's what we're advancing towards, and that's what we've got to keep trying to do. Just before, go on, Les. Go on.
Yeah, Derbyshire, what are Steve's thoughts about the new Pope? Danny Sheehan called him the Disclosure Pope.
Yeah. There's never going to be a disclosure Pope. Blimey, flipping heck. I mean, we talk about disclosure. The Vatican has got more areas to keep things under disclosure than even the Pentagon or even secret programs out there. The stuff they know, But nothing's done by chance. They know what this phenomena represents. They know how to entice the phenomena. They know how to please the phenomena. It is not by chance. They don't do nothing by chance. You know, they're big radio telescopes called Lucifer because it's nicknamed after the equipment that it's used. Do you think that's purely by chance? No, it's not purely by chance. Everything is done for a reason. Invocations, you know, things that can invoke or evoke responses, you know. And they like that because they're always trying to learn stuff. They're sat on the mountains and stuff. I don't think we're going to have any Pope come forward. And
I think if a major religion around of the world disclosed something, it would only be in its favour. It would only to favour the religion. Because I think I know where you're going to go with this. I think, Steve, because I think if a massive religious movement like Catholicism, or if they know they might not know the everything, but they know probably a lot more than what I'll ever know. Yet they're not disclosing it, and for what reason? Is it going to damage the religion? Is it going to be adverse to what they have propagated and the narrative that they've propagated? I think that's probably the reason we're not going to get disclosure from a major religion.
I can't imagine it. You know, I mean, you know, it's very. You know, when you start to look at what it consists of, you know, you're talking of a religious pact who murdered 70 million people on the fact that, you know, you do it our way or else, and for that forceful religion process through the Templar days. You know, there were various different stages in time it's gone through the Vatican, where they were involved in all sorts of different things to try to get answer, because they felt like it brought them nearer to God because of the phenomena, you see, because it can be very godly like. So they thought, well, maybe that's the clue, maybe that's the answer. But they will encompass all, because they made a statement years ago saying, look, you know what, if God created us and God created the universe, then it's created the things within it. Well, yes, but now people are kind of feeling the fact, well, what is God, and is it a source? Is it responsible for everything that we do and everything that's been created, the whole universe? It gets very tricky, but I can't imagine any Pope coming out with anything, to be honest.
I would agree.
It's basically a position that they'll hold for a certain length of time.
Okay, Pendle Hill UFOs question: is Steve aware of Matthew Brown's disclosure? What are your thoughts?
Matthew Brown, I don't think.
No, I don't know what that
Have
is.
you heard anything about Matthew? I haven't. I may have done, but I don't ring a bell.
Okay.
Just while we're on with the religious part of it, unless you've already got the question, can you see the question from Rick Allen? I can see it here. I'll read it then, Les. Because no one would follow Catholicism if the truth came out, Paul. And I know we're just echoing that, but I just wanted to get that in because I think Rick asked a few questions other week, and it was no fault of Les's or anybody's, that we just didn't see them, Rick. And that's just how it is sometimes. But yeah,
that's a good point, actually. I mean, the thing is, when it comes to the Vatican, is the Vatican are aware what phenomena is, but they've covered it up and they've changed the angle on it to make it something more religious. And they keep doing it. There's areas of the Bible which are just inaccuracies. Francis of Assisi, for an example, goes outside one day. He's with a friend. He's with witnesses. Some strange craft comes down, fires a laser beam at him. He's absolutely petrified and goes like this. The result of that was that he got burnt down one side of his chest, and he burnt his hands.
Right.
And then the Catholic Church said, "Oh, let's change that to the Christ wounds." So the burnt hands became the wounds of Christ, and that became the, you know, where he was stabbed. Christ was stabbed, you know, and he was hospitalized, nearly killed him. You know, but they won't tell you that.
It fits the narrative, didn't it? It fits the narrative that they want you to follow. Yeah,
exactly. And there are hundreds of examples of that. Hundreds of them.
Lovely.
David Hunt is asking what your opinion is, Steve, on the Foo Fighters, and he believes they are UFO in origin.
Yeah, I do believe the Foo Fighters are, you know, originally. I mean, they were flying around before then, before the Second World War. It was just a name given at the time. But yes, and we still get them occasionally, even now, you know, and people do see them. But back then is no different than it is now. When it comes to skirmishes, battles, wars, they're the watchers. They watch. They don't intervene. It's not about I want to save humanity, because that's not the case. They're quite happy to sit back, but they're really interested in watching us. I remember in the Gulf War, when they were showing Gulf War, when it took place and they were showing stuff on TV, there was two different news teams. ABC was one of them, and CNBC, I think it was. They're capturing things in the sky, which just seemingly was just watching it all unfold. And they were recording them, I remember it coming out on the news. You don't know what they were, but they just seemed to be observers. And that's what the Foo Fighters really did as well. They kind of just observed, us flying with technology and weapons and things. So I do see that they've been the watchers for a long time.
Both sides. It weren't just one side, was
No,
it? Just out of interest, then, do you think that because we did a short a couple of years ago, myself and Les, on the ancient UFOs and reports during battles, and in some of the documentation, it almost seems like the phenomena favors one side over another.
Sometimes it does, yeah. Sometimes the phenomena can. It's very thought out on the behalf of the phenomena. It realizes that there's a reason for everything. So if it can intervene and will sway the odds in favor of another way, if you just look like Alexander the Great, for an example, these two shields come down. He was come down, scared the war elephants, couldn't go and besiege the city that day because it was all a mess because the elephants were all upset. Did it the following day. They turned up again. And what these walls of this city, they were like the walls of Jericho. They're like 50 foot. But you know what? They fired things down. Well, obviously some pencil beam lights. Next minute, the wall crumbles, allowing him to besiege the city. The story goes on there, though, that actually when he died, he was taken up in a flying chariot. And these men saw him traverse through the skies, whatever that's supposed to mean. But what's really interesting is that if you look at any statues or sometimes even visual representations of Alexander the Great, he tends to have horns on his head, and the horn seems to represent on many occasions higher than the halo. You can say spiritual beings have the halo, but higher workers of God might have the horns of light. And this is what it means. It's a representation. And it's exactly the same for Moses. Funny enough, strangely enough. You look at all the stained glass windows or statues of Moses, he's horned, and these people in history were the workers of God.
Yeah.
And like the true story of Moses, instead of Moses, who was up Mount Horeb, not Sinai. This story is basically he was interacting with profoundly unusual phenomena, and the scriptures state that there were 4 fiery discs in the sky. So when you look at that, you say, well, what are the workers of God? Are they doing God's work? But it seems that they sometimes they help out, and it did in Moses' case, and it did in Alexander the Great's case.
And in the case of the terminology, they're the aliens of yesterday. Just to simplify it, Go on, Les. Are you okay with questions, Steve?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's interesting, Steve, that you say about the Foo Fighters. The Foo Fighters, that they've took one side or the other and steered it towards one side or the other side in favour of.
There'll be a reason somewhere.
Yeah. So taking that one step further, then, Steve, these nuclear bombs that we've dropped, we have dropped them. We've dropped them on desert islands, the Americans have and everything, and elsewhere. And the military bunkers, now they've been targeted by UFOs, lights, orbs, or whatever, to disable these military nuclear bunkers, Steve. Do you think, so my question is really, do you think they would stop an all-out nuclear war?
Honest answer, no. I really don't. The phenomena, if you really get into this, sometimes there's a lot of negativity with this phenomena, and it's been like that since right from day one. These different entities, or even referred to as deities and gods, have always wanted blood sacrifice. Always want, even our own God The Bible that we've got probably next to our beds. If you really read it through, some days God had a pretty bad day, and he was peed off, and he would swipe you. You know what I mean? And you'd be gone. And sometimes he demanded blood sacrifice, and it happened. People were killed on his behalf. Our God, the one we know, the one we think we know. And it's no different than any other ancient god, be it Mayan or Aztec or whatever. Blood sacrifice seems to be a big thing. How do you get that on a grander scale? Through the development of mass weapons, where that you're not just killing one person, it kills thousands of people. And sometimes these weapon factories have been moved into certain locations where it's rewarding for them. And when you research those locations, you'll think it's strife in negative phenomena going back where sacrificial stuff is happened. Why is it we will, it's like Stonehenge. We're in negative areas down there. I've seen little kids many years ago. Can't get to Stonehenge now really much. Little kids climbing all over it, and you don't realise they're on an altar. They're on a blood altar. You don't realise what was going on there. But it's right next door to the manufacturers of a chemical weapon plants and weapons training grounds. And they were there and relocated there purposely into that location. So, which 75% of these weapon manufacturers are in those type of locations. So there's definitely got to be something to it.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, just where we live, not far from where Les is, tallest standing stone in Great Britain, Rudston Monolith, 6 miles from where I'm sat. People come and throw their arms around it and embrace it and hug it, and they lay there gazing up at it. And when it were excavated, they found huge quantities of human skulls. Blood sacrifice or sacrifice. It's there.
It's always been here, but we just don't see it now because it's done through weapons of mass destruction, on a grander scale, basically, in a sense of speaking. But you know what? At the same time, though, if you reel it back and look through, the veil of it all, you kind of realize, okay, it's the same mechanism at play here. Exactly the same thing. So it's been going on for a long, long, long time.
Okay, I'll come back a little bit later on, guys, if that's all right.
Okay, thanks, Les.
All right, Paul.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading something there. I was miles away. I didn't even hear you say anything. Yeah, go on. Let's catch you in a minute.
Yeah, I'll be back a little bit later on, Paul. Okay?
Yeah, okay. I've just had one of them moments. Then I'm just tripping. You talked earlier, Steve. You mentioned your own experiences, and did you spend many years? Obviously, people know you as a researcher, traveling all over the place, lecturing. But in the early stages of when you first started lecturing, did you talk about your own experiences?
Oh, recently I've started talking more.
I knew it was loaded because I thought I knew what.
No, I would never have done that because, we've been, quite a critical researcher and investigator. I didn't want it to be biased. I didn't want people to think my opinions and conclusions would be biased because of my own beliefs. It was good to know that I understand how witnesses, how they feel about stuff because I know that.
Yes, I suppose some people would have thought that, but you can't deny the truth of what you saw and experienced. How much of that do you want to talk about? Any of them?
I mean, times have changed now, and I don't mind talking about stuff. But I have had a very problematic upbringing from being 7 years of age, and I wasn't a person that would wake up in the middle of the night. I was like, I opened my eyes, it's morning, But I remember waking up and it was dark. I remember my mother and father weren't up because they were in bed, so I knew it must be in the middle of the night. I wasn't too sure why I'd woke up, but just kind of turned over and tried to go back to sleep. But I heard a noise, and it was coming from one of the areas of my bedroom. There was the darkest area, and it was coming from the darkest area. And I leant up, and this thing came out of the dark, and it was. Well, it looks a bit like a grey compared to, I didn't know that then, absolutely petrified, but no sound could come out, and I couldn't even get up and run. And this thing had me, and it was a strange experience because it was like it was learning about my emotions and it put thoughts and images in my head and made me do things, you know, like 1 minute I'm jumping up and down on the bed and I'm happy and I'm laughing. And I'm thinking to myself, what all the time is, what am I doing? But I'm acting that way. And then the next minute I'm sad and, you know, I'm upset and I'm crying. And then something else. It was like I was going through a phase of various different emotions.
Do you think it, I don't know, I guess we'll never know, but you lived that. Do you think it wanted to feel those emotions rather than put you through them? Yes, because it wanted to feel what that was like, because it's almost like these things are soulless. They're compassionless.
It did seem like that. Years on now, and I think about it, it feels like it was inquisitive about the emotions. And we do a different mode. Our next minute I'm angry, and the last thing it did was basically it came right up literally, and I couldn't move, and it was only about this far away from my face, and all that time I could not take my eyes off its eyes, just the black depth of its eyes. And I just I couldn't see him because I'm locked onto his eyes, but I can see him in a kind of vision. It brought its two hands up. Oh, it had 4 fingers. I remember that. He had like a thumb and 3, you know, so it was missing his little finger. I absolutely remember that. And it came up and it grabbed me cheeks and it pinched really hard and it was painful. So that was an emotion. Pain is an emotion. And I was like, sort of thing. Anyway, it's, you know, I was absolutely frantic. And it disappeared back to the corner of the room. And that was the start of my experiences. It was from that day on that I had so many different things in all the places that I've lived, and even when I've been on holiday in places.
I
was just tormented, really, you know, and I was so scared. I used to bloody wet the bed. It was that bad.
Well, I can relate to that. And do you think, like you said, even when you've been on holiday, do you think that these things, the connection to these things, to them is just a thought process away, maybe? And they don't. I mean, you'd look at it going on holiday. I don't know where you'd go to. Let's assume you travel 200 miles to go to a location. I don't think that really figures in the mechanics of how these things get from A to B. People talk about the hitchhiker effect, and some people, I think, imagine it's somehow connected to them. And I just think it's a thought process. But this thing, like you said, even on holiday. But now, as a mature man, an investigator, do you sometimes lay in bed thinking, "I want to see this now. I want to understand"?
No. Yeah. Well, my last experience a bit like that, when I had a bedroom visitor. It was 2, and one was taller than the other one, and that was in October last year.
Really?
That was in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And
any mind communication or just visual?
I was absolutely petrified, mate. And I don't know why. That's the thing. I do not know why I have that emotion, but I was petrified, mate. Yeah, it was. I was a wreck. And they walked into my cupboard to disappear. And mine's a sliding door on my wardrobe, and they walked into it and vanished. It just doesn't make any sense.
What do you think the significance, Steve, is of wardrobes and cupboards and chests? Because it seems to come up, not just in the stuff I look at, lots and lots of times, you know, that people say these things came out of the wardrobe. I mean, we talked about, Linny talked about a haunted wardrobe, and then somebody sent me a report. It was coincidence, really, of what they perceived as a haunted wardrobe and beings coming out of it. And you've just said they walked into it. I mean, I don't know.
I woke up and they were already there. But when they departed, they just turned and walked into the wardrobe.
And can you imagine talking about that 20, 30 years ago?
I've never talked about that.
You know, I didn't talk about the things that happened to me, really.
No, I mean, I've never.
We came here. Until it started again.
I think I had to wait for times to change about acceptability. That, you know, you can say something now and people won't think that you've just lost your brain. But back then, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think I only started talking about it maybe 5 6 years back, and they crept in slowly because, I was an only child. I was playing football in the back garden. This was when I was about 8 or 9, so it's a couple of years since the first incident. And we had a big laurel bush, and it was a big bush, but I don't know if you see laurel. Laurel's very thick, rubbery leaves, variated, and it's so thick, you can't see anything, but it was just in a garden. And then a horse's head came out. It was a horse's head. It was pure white horse, and it came out of the laurel bush. And I used to think, a horse can't fit in there. But he was communicating. He'd ask questions and stuff.
Right.
And I saw it 3 times that, and it always came out the laurel bush. And it was a horse's head that came out, white horse's head. Then it was the little man in the bedroom. I used to hear a cracking sound. I thought, what is that?
A static, like almost electrical cracking.
Yeah, like an electrical cracking sound. And then I used to see a little man, but he always used to sort of go like this. And that scared me to death. I'm not going anywhere.
Beckoning you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got out of there and I'd have to change rooms. But the thing is, it just followed to another room. Yeah. So by the time I think I was about 10. I was 10, yeah. My mother and father took me to a child psychologist. And I remember going through a whole series of questions and looking at things and asking me stuff. And then basically this guy got up, and I didn't realize at the time, but he's obviously a psychologist or something. And he asked me, mum and dad, to come back in. And I sat in his chair. My mum and dad sat next to me. And I remember clearly saying to him, "This is Mr. Mera." He said, you've got perfectly fine 10-year-old boy, and I think they were trying to figure out, is this something physically, biologically wrong with me? Because I would panic, and because I'd seen things. It was crazy sometimes because it was like it'd do it on purpose and then disappear just prior to them coming through the door.
Yeah. Well, you said that earlier. They can predict, they know our every move, and I'm 100% agree with that.
Yeah, so I ended up sleeping with a lamp on for a long time. But sometimes I'd hear something, and then the light would go off on its own.
And did obviously your parents, did they experience anything, or were they just concerned?
Well, they did, but they wouldn't tell me until when I got into this subject. Then they started sort of telling me a few things, and my mother came to me first because my dad's had quite a lot. But my mum came to me first, and she said she wanted to apologise that I could have been a better mother. And I said, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" Well, there were times when I could hear you screaming,
and I knew,
and I couldn't come and help you. And I thought, what does that mean? And then my dad had a number of experiences and things, but he never said anything to me until only about maybe 20. 30 years ago at the least,
I suppose not you, all of us, we have to realize that whatever you're relaying today and whatever I experienced and people in chat, it's been traumatic for you, so it was no different for them, and even worse probably, because look at us now, we're talking about this today, 62-year-old talking about something like this, which is absolutely off the scale of normal, what normal people consider normal, but we're doing it. But I don't know, 62 years ago, when my parents were alive, if these things were happening, it were a complete taboo. It was a no-no. You wouldn't have discussed it.
Exactly. Yeah, but it never, I thought, and people used to say, oh, it'll all disappear when you get into your teens, your late teens, because your biology and your chemistry changes in your body. You're kind of, more into girls then or whatever. But it didn't. No. And it's continued. It hasn't let up at all since I've been 7 years of age. And there's so much. Mick McLaren came round. Your listeners probably know Mick McLaren.
Mick, yeah.
And he was here the other day. And
are you sure? Has Lee Roscoe done anything with you as well?
Yeah, Lee's been as well. And, and they asked me just in the house where they are at the time, because they were here, what sort of things have I witnessed? And I said, well, how long have you got? Because it's crazy stuff. And it's so from balls of light to poltergeist type stuff, hearing people talking, little girls chatting. Sometimes it's happened in the car, as if they're sat in the back of the car when we've been driving.
Yeah.
You know, hammering at the door, things disappearing, things moving. You know, it's just all sorts of things.
How about this then, Steve? Why is it not? Why it's highly possible that you've been subjected to this, because this is why you're in the place you are. And I don't mean sat here today, but on the front stage, on the forefront, talking about this subject. And you're as prominent as anybody in the UK, people up there with anybody in the world, really, when it comes to talking about the unexplained. So you've got a good grounding to start with. The foundations were there because you didn't believe, you knew. You didn't have to believe, you knew.
No.
So these could be the reason.
It could be, you know. I mean, I think back to that first time when I was 7. Why that time? Why that night? Why would it all just suddenly happen? And it was an initiated experience. I was initiated that night. It's the only way I could describe it. I went through initiation. And it was ever since that one night that thing turned up. It was always been forever since. So maybe because I am aware through the experiments that, you know, we've been involved in, that we've communicated with things which aren't human, non-NHI, through experiments. And we've gathered data from them that would tell us where we are in 19 months' time to the day. And they've done this 6 times, and they've been absolutely right, which makes me question free will, of course. But if they can see into the future, then they might know that because me being initiated when I was 7 years of age, in 20, 30 years' time, I could be able to talk to 5,000 people. I think they want to be known. They want to. Do you know? It's like the flock. It's a bit like the church. You know what I mean? I think they like it, Paul. I think they get a thing out of it about, oh, you know, talk about us, be in the mind's eye. You know, it's a sense of praising them in a sense, which is really it's a form of worship.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I think they love it. And this is why they were so responsive to ritualistic practices.
So there is godlike qualities. Absolutely. And I don't mean it's great because you're talking about it, but I think it is good because it shows another layer of Steve Mera that we didn't see probably 10 years ago, 8 years ago. Obviously, you'll have told some people, but you know, you kept that part of it personal and private to yourself. But I don't think out of embarrassment, did you? Was it just? Did you think if I start talking about this, people will think I'm just jumping on bandwagon? I don't know.
Well, I didn't get into what happened. I basically said, well, I had some experiences from when I was young, you know, and I kind of just eased into it that way because I was a bit concerned how people might think I've lost the bloody plot. and I don't blame them. Yeah. You know, I really don't. But people in my, you know, I've had people that don't believe anything, but if you spend enough time with me and you go out with me, you'll see the stuff yourself.
Yeah, things will happen.
The people that are with will start to become experiencers, you know, and then sometimes they can pull away from me and be individually experiencers, have continued things themselves. It's like they've charged. And then they can go.
It's that snowball effect, isn't it? And you'll get there, and it just ripples on. Well, you know, in 1997, when I got the holes in my back, and I went to the hospital, and they examined them. This was before they did the biopsies, and the doctors sat there or stood there looking at these holes and telling me to tell him who'd done them. And we could, you shouldn't allow anybody to do this to you. You know, this is, you know, they extend deep into your back, and somebody's clearly done this. And it were even crazier, the thought of telling him what I knew had done them than it was easier to lie and say he knew I was lying. Yeah. He knew 100% knew I was lying, but he could never have known the reasons why I was lying. That's what I'm saying. And now, I don't mean I'm going to go to a doctor and tell him, but now I feel kind of okay about talking about it. And you've heard of the guys who are writing the paper, is it Unhidden?
Yes,
I think it's John Priestland and a group of doctors, and they were inspired from the awakening and listening to that lecture that I did on the night people. which is, and I were reluctant to sort of work with them at first, but they're putting this to doctors and panels of medical professionals, to basically to show that these people, and I say I am one of these people, we're not having psychotic episodes. These things are actually happening, but it's just incredible and off the scale of what people perceive, really.
Yeah, it really is. And I know that I came to the conclusion many years ago that nobody can do anything to help when you have these experiences, because sometimes those people don't react as they should do. And it's just like you're victimized in a sense of speaking.
Yeah.
And I didn't want any experiences. It was frightening. As I got older, I went through a point of being peed off, basically. Like, well, I've had enough of them and this, that, and the other. And that didn't work.
No.
It didn't stop him. I didn't react as I wanted to, but no. And afterwards I was like, oh, that didn't work. So it's like, oh God, what can you do? You have the mercy. So I thought, okay, all right, well, I just accept the fact is that this is not going to go stop him, and I can't do nothing about it.
Yeah.
And then when somebody new came into my hive, I was very open, and I used to say, look, I just want to say to you, I do have some strange experiences, and the people around me do experience some of that stuff. And I did it. I did when I met Jackie, and when I got with Jackie, I said, look, be prepared, and now she knows because she's experienced it, and she really does experience quite a lot now,
Really?
Yeah, she does.
Is it? I don't want to speak for Jackie, really. I'm just wondering, is it negative or positive, the types of...
No, well, she's witnessed the same things I do, but then she'll the UFO stuff, I mean, very potent with Jackie. She's good. She gets the calling. She's like I did. Yeah. I thought it was just me that I'd suddenly get a feeling and get up and go out and I'd see something. But no, she's got that as well now.
Okay.
And she knows. She just says, like, she'll just say, "Oh, let's go out and have a look," and then there'll be something there, and it's
this collective energy that she's feeding off. It's almost contagious, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It really is. Yeah, so there's no answers to it, Paul. Really, at the end of the day.
Out of everything that you've investigated, all the different genres of the unexplained, if there was something that, look, Steve, you've got to stop looking into ghosts. You've got to stop looking into UFOs. You've got to choose one subject now. We know that they're all linked. We know that there's a bleed through, but Steve, you've got to choose one. And what personal favourite have you got that you really sort of catches your attention?
It would be the UAP stuff now. Yeah, most definitely, because it's interconnected anyway. So, I mean, I did, when you do your paranormal investigation, there's only so much you can do unless you get into experimental stuff, which I've done. But as soon as you get into the experimental stuff, you end up getting into UFO stuff, because of the things that are being seen. The NHI turning up, you thinking you're talking to spirits and you're not, and you realize, well, back around we go. It just seems whatever angle you go, you're going to come back to that. So I kind of set me camp there, and that seems to be the place for me in regarding. But it's, I'm always looking for evidence.
Absolutely.
I want data so that you could. And the problem is that we're dealing with a phenomena that won't respond when you expect it to respond.
No, don't work.
So it's so hard to bench test because science always wants certain things to happen at a certain time.
Yeah, but you can't take this into a laboratory, as you know. I'm not talking. No.
It's like
its laboratory is its environment where it
exactly. I've argued this point. I've lectured along parapsychologists from Kostler Parapsychology when I was lecturing for them, and these are like doctors and professors and stuff. And I said, look, you know what? You need something between your scientific environment that you have in your university and the general public. You need something in between, because when you're investigating this, the problem is, it's like if you're investigating an Arctic fox, it's not going to act normal if you bring it into a lab. You've got to go to the Antarctic. You've got to look what it acts like there to witness it. And that's the same for phenomena.
Good analogy. That kind of works in. I think everybody's heads in chat. It works, doesn't it?
It does work.
And we're not just dealing with something. We're dealing with something that's absolutely not just one step in front, but we're so advanced in front of everything that we're doing. Do you sometimes think that your life, everybody's lives is mapped out and they know the outcome? Talking about coincidence and things happening, it's almost like you get a little taste of what's to come.
Yeah, it's strange because I believe the phenomena has a tie with reality, because my reality, and then people, I mean, quantum physicists will say you kind of create your own reality. Well, if that's the case, then my reality is pretty strange, because the amount of coincidences and synchronicities and multiple serendipities over and over again would suggest a higher intelligence is laying a path and putting opportunities in front of me which are advantageous if I want to go for that way, you know.
I get it, yeah.
So I learned to paddle with the current and not against it. And once I did, all these doors started opening. I thought, this is really strange, but you know what? I'm going to go with the flow. And it does. And it's strange. And it's like, you know, well, reality can be altered in some way or something. You know, there's too much for it to be just, oh, it's just a coincidence. Well, no, when's a coincidence not become a coincidence?
Well, do you know on, I can't remember the day. I think it probably was Tuesday. And a lady contacted me because she'd seen something very strange in this area in East Yorkshire, Danesdyke. Strange looking animal. Met up with her and I picked her up and we went to Danesdyke and we walked through where she'd seen it. We walked around. Originally from up northeast, you know, strong accent, lovely woman. And as we're walking back, we had to just step either side of the road because there's a motorhome or a van coming up. And this guy stopped the van from northeast, from Durham, no connection to this lady, never met her in her life. And he says, Paul, I said, yeah. He says, you got a minute? I've got something to tell you. So we got two people from very similar location, all telling me a similar story, one from a few, and just by chance on this afternoon, this guy could have come at any time. This Michael, a lovely guy, spent some time with him again yesterday, gathering his account, and this lady came along as well, and Mary, you know, but it was fascinating. But I thought to myself, what are the chances of those elements coming together? Me being there at that exact time, this lady from same location, but never met this guy.
I know.
Just weird.
It's so strange. Shouldn't happen like that, since you know, consistently, but it does. And you'll find that interconnections between people and places, and it's so weird. But I just kind of go, well, I just sort of I laugh at it sometimes, just kind of shrug my shoulders. Well, that's the universe doing its thing.
Absolutely. So, you know. So where obviously you've got the awakening coming up, that's probably the biggest thing in your mind until Saturday night's over. But where are you going next? What's the things on the horizon as regards the research, Steve? And then we'll pull Les in and see if there's some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, of course, there was always continued projects and stuff. I'm starting a new project, which is called Project Enigma. And that's basically it's all about the advanced UAP studies. It's about the limitations, capabilities, types of equipment to utilize what we've discovered. You know, the oscillation and manipulation of light that is emitted from UAP and how it doesn't fall under the characteristics of normal light.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
It's profoundly unusual.
How can something, Steve, and I'm sorry for cutting you.
You're right.
Be so bright, so intense, it lights nothing up around it.
Exactly. You know, we've been measured up to 50,000 watts of light coming from the source. So we can calculate what is from illumination to illumination when it hits the surface, calculate it's roughly how far it is away and how much illumination we should have. And we got zero. It's like, what? Or 1%. And what the hell? It's not acting as normal light would do under the parameters of our physics and our understanding. So I'm getting into all that sort of thing. And it's a deep dive into the physics behind phenomena, you know, including light bending. For an example, you know, people who have torches which are bent, people who have car headlights that are
in some kind of field.
Exactly, you know, and it's a gravitational anomaly. It causes that. But there's lots of stuff in the science area about that. So I'm trying to get a little bit more into that, which was referring to as a Project Enigma, because it is an enigma because we just not got the physics to work it out. So that we're working on that, and that's that new one coming. We're still working on Project Doorway, and there's some more stuff. We definitely, there's another half yet to come to what we've just discovered in Spain. So we continue with those studies. And I'm getting also, I'm still working in the paranormal mechanics area, and like apport phenomena. What's interesting is about the resource of phenomena in regarding, I had people that had a series of poltergeist events taking place for about 5 years, weren't short-lived, and they were having things disappear and they never returned. Well, not too long back, they decided to knock through the wall into another room to make a bigger room downstairs, and in the cavity were 5 items which disappeared.
Right.
And now they're literally 2 foot away from the item that disappeared, but it's in the wall, Paul.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And there were 5 of these items we discovered, which they go, that's our stuff. What's going on? It's in the cavity. So the resources are involved when things disappear. It doesn't have to be so far away because it takes a lot of energy. It's right next to you under the floorboard or in the wall.
It's hidden in plain sight, but it's that deconstructing of the solid object. It's absolutely well. You've probably watched the talk that I'm doing, Hummingbee. You'll have seen what them guys are talking about, and the money that was falling, African coins, all sorts of coins.
I've got a load. Yeah.
Well, they never kept any.
I've kept them all.
Really?
But I don't keep them in the house because when they were first taken from properties where I was investigating and stuff, I would store them, wouldn't bring them into the house because I refer to them as hot, not temperature hot, but active hot. Because sometimes phenomena will track the apport. And you'll get what happens when you remove the apports from the location quite quickly. Sometimes you get a suppression of phenomena for a few days, as if it's caused some confusion, as if the apport is kind of an anchor as to deliver phenomena to.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But I've kept them, and I've got little ornaments and little pins and buttons, and now I had one actually happen to me in the house, and it was a dime. And I was just walking downstairs, and there it is in the middle of a dark carpet, right there in the middle. There's no way you could miss it. Why is it there? I'm only one in the house. Pick it up. It looks like, it's like brand new. This dime is American dime, and it turned out that I did a bit of checking into it, and it turned out to be quite a rare dime.
Really?
Because this dime was worth over £1,000. It's a dime because it was minted and created in one particular place in Pittsburgh, which is exactly the same place I'm going to in next month. At the time, because a month later I was in Pittsburgh, in the very town where it was minted, and it was just a month earlier. And I thought, how weird is that?
It's just too much of a coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. Shall we pull Les in? We've got 15-20 minutes here. Is that okay, Steve?
Yeah, sure.
All right, Les, you got some questions?
Yeah, we sure have, and thanks for all the questions from you guys in the chat tonight. Great questions as always, and got to thank Karen and Lee for the super chat. Always helps the channel. Thank you very much. And I've got a question. Yeah, and I got a question from John Doe. Just had a notification from Mick McLaren about the sighting of a banshee on Windsor Hill. Is that where you had your sightings, Dave?
It was us that saw the banshee. It was me and Jackie, And I wouldn't expect to see a banshee up on Winter Hill. I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, I'm not even Irish.
Crying out loud, pardon the pun, but yeah, go on. It's,
It's just, why would I?
Scream?
It is a bit. And she flew in 20 foot above us, across the road, dive bombed behind this limestone wall in a way that with her arms behind her, she should have plowed her head into the ground. There was no maneuver in the sky to land, and yet that's how I saw it. It moved profoundly, very odd. It's not normal, but it had, as it came across it, I remember the grey dress had tatty bits, and it was wafting as it was moving. It was like the wind was. So, in other words, if it's just an hallucination of some sort, but it's reacting with the environment because it's traveling through the air and
the
quite
ripple.
fast. Its dress was like going like this, and it looked bigger, but its face was not pale; it was white. It was a white face, as if it had been painted white, black for eyes, and its mouth was just wide open.
How long since, Steve? How long since is this?
It's about 4 years ago. It was. I was coming down. I was with Jackie at the time, and we're going 10 mile an hour down top of Windsor Hill from Rivington, and it's a very, very bumpy road. And we're in Jackie's car, not my Jeep. So, we're going like this sort of thing because it's dead bumpy. So we're only going about 10 mile an hour, 10, 15 mile an hour. Mm-hmm. And I remember it came up from the wall behind, and just first off, I saw two hands come up and go like this, and they were white. And then the head came up, and it was like it just, with its mouth open, was just watching us, and we're watching it. But what was really interesting is what I refer to as cognitive limitation. This is what the phenomena does sometimes, and this is why people go, "Oh my God, I should have took a photo." And I had the camera in my hand. Sometimes it grabs you, the phenomena, and don't release you until it's ready. We travelled. We both looked at this. Jackie looked at it. I looked at it. And then we just looked back forward and just carried on for half a mile. Yeah. And I didn't even say anything to Jackie. No, Jackie never said anything to me. For some reason, it doesn't make sense because you're like me, Paul. I mean, I'm going to jump. I'm going to slam the brakes. I'm going to jump out the gas. I'm going to know what's going on. But no, half a mile later, suddenly I was like a switch happened in my mind and went, "Did you just see something?" To Jackie, I just slammed the brakes on. Oh my God, tell me what you've just seen. And she saw the same thing. But it doesn't make any sense, to see a banshee.
Was there any sound, Steve? Was there any?
No
did
sound.
It make any sound? Yeah.
None at all. No sound, no screaming, nothing. But it was flying, and it flew in across us in sight, so we could see it. And then dive bomb behind this wall in a very weird way. You think that she normally, the way it went in, she would have just buried herself into the ground head first, but no turning in flight. And she came up from this wall and watched us. We was watching us, watching it.
It's crazy. Absolutely. In an active area, very active area, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah, but I don't expect that. I mean, I go up
no.
because I've seen sort of UFOs and things up there and that, but that, like, I'll never forget that because that's something that stands out. I mean, I saw a dogman once when I was young in Derbyshire. When I was young, I was about maybe 14, something like that, and I totally freaked out when I saw that. But and I'd seen that banshee, so I was like, "What the hell is that?" I don't know. I talked to Bias, and he said, "Well, it sounds like a banshee to me." I said, "Well, I'm not Irish, and why is it here in the UK?"
It's fascinating. Thank you.
It's fascinating that because I was in a motorhome. I was in a motorhome in Lincolnshire. Is it Lincolnshire near the Wash, near the Wash area? And I didn't see a banshee, but the sound that we've all heard of a banshee absolutely creeps me out. Yeah, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
we are in the middle of nowhere. No living being.
Did you leave the area?
The next morning, as soon as I could get that van started, the -5 degrees it was. Yeah. And I was gone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we was gone. But so a couple of banshee sound what I heard would have gone.
Yeah,
with your vision of the banshee itself.
Yeah, didn't hear anything.
It was a typical sound, maybe movie induced, Steve. From movies. I don't know.
I didn't hear anything, but as soon as I came back, I googled the banshee and I looked at the images, and there it was with a white face, exactly the same. Don't get it. Don't know what.
Yeah, so kind of an on-running question is with most of our guests from the start of the year is what do you think, or what did you think to the New Jersey UFO sightings?
I did investigate them.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on that. And you started off with phenomena in the skies. I recognize it as phenomena. Look, you guys would recognize it as phenomena. It's the same stuff you see at Bempton, the light phenomena. And it looks to be intelligent. That's what initiated in New Zealand. Now, somehow they had to curb or dilute the situation because these were going to be seen more and more and more. So what the American authorities did, the secret authorities, they decided to launch the new toys up there and cause mass confusion, which they did. They did a great psyop job. And you had both up there then. And then what happens is an thorough investigation and released by the FAA, Federal Aviation Authority, say, oh, it's okay, we cleared them. In other words, they were cleared to go up there. And then everybody went, oh, well, don't worry, guys. It's just, it's our toys. Let's, and they're not telling us. This is why they're seen over military facilities, because they were coming from there. That's where they were launching them from. But you've got wonderful ones. It's like that film Batteries Not Included years ago with the little UFO things. And at the end, thousands of them turn up, but they all look different. And this is what they do. They make all these wonderful toys that you think it's got to be ours, but it doesn't act like a plane or a helicopter, and it doesn't look quite the same, and it causes absurdity. And they've got all these wonderful different shapes and sizes, and they threw them up there. So you had both going on at the same time. Now, over 300,000 people witnessed the stuff in New Jersey, and I actually got a CCTV video, which I'm going to be showing actually at the Awakening event. Excellent. And it's a CCTV camera looking out at the shoreline of New Jersey one evening, and it sped it up to 4 speed, so you can see. But there's over 60 just in this few seconds of video footage coming down from the sky, entering a bank, a layer of cloud just prior to going into the oceans. And there were lots of these things, so I think we had both going on over there. It was really strange.
Do you think this is the next step up in the game to mask the sort of entrance of the phenomena? They're going to be doing more and more of this.
Well, I think they have a protocol, and it's a very clever psyop actually, because if this stuff appears over the sky and it is the phenomena, we got to dilute this situation quick. So we launch our stuff. And then there's an official investigation, and then people pretty much told, "Don't worry, guys, it's our stuff." And then it all gets put in the bin.
Covered. They've covered it, haven't they? They've absolutely
clever. It's very clever, actually, what they've done, but and very effective. But they seem like they've got these countermeasures in place.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question from Zeno. I find it fascinating that the US military had to swap out the red band spectrum night vision goggles to green band due to seeing demons in Vietnam. The Pentagon went dark about it, and in other words, nothing to see here.
Yeah, I did look into this quite a bit, and it's an old story, but you know what? When the more you look into that, it just falls apart. To be honest.
Do you think there's no truth in the red goggles?
Well, I think there is some elements of truth to this, because apparently there were some people that were that did have some problems, but the whole aspect of the story got emphasized and added on to over the years. I mean, it was something I looked into. It's an older story actually.
Yeah.
Goes back.
Well, I think it says Vietnam, doesn't it? So we know we're going back
It goes back quite far, and I looked into it. I think it was mentioned to me years ago, and I looked into it, but all I could find was the fact that other people had done some research into it and discovered that this person had these problems, and he was saying this and that was saying that. Some of them were mistruths, and it got a bit mixed up, to be honest. The whole aspect of being able to see demons wearing red band spectrum night vision goggles, I mean, if you really think about it, the whole process of being able to see demons would be something that they deliver if they wanted to be seen. And you can see you don't need red band spectrum night vision goggles to see them, because there have been plenty of people that reported seeing these things just with the normal eyesight.
I think I'm on the same page as you here with this, Steve, and Zeno's sort of well versed in this. But I think there was a particular element within the makeup.
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
it was an enhancer which was being used. But it was basically initiated with an account from a person who was relaying information, but then he was not a stable individual according to the information. So, and then it got added on to and other things, and it wasn't just initially demons; it was other things as well he was seeing. So, you know, but then the people just highlighted on the demons because it makes the story, you know.
I think Zeno's going to the awakening, and if you are Zeno, don't come in that outfit. Introduce yourself. We want to see who you are.
We may notice you turn up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dragonborn, Steve, what do you think shadow people are?
Well, you know, it depends on which aspects, you know, you research in. If you want to go, I mean, most references to shadow people would be referencing to the jinn, to be honest with you. But then you can get into research where shadow people are associated directly more so for the phenomena as the paranormal. But then there's even an area of shadow people connected to the UFO NHI stuff as well. Sometimes there's been a bit of both in some occasions. You know, the problem is our terminology. We always create a box and a term for it. And that's the problem. You find something, we go, I'm not too sure, let's call it this. And then people do that for many years. But the shadow figures, shadow people have been associated right across the whole scale of seeing figures, you know, shadow figures in forest lands and national parks. They've been associated to the sighting of UFOs. They've been associated to demological as spiritual, supernatural, paranormal. So it's like, well, it's like we end up with that crossover point, don't we? If we were going to research this, we'd end up in several areas because they represent so many different things.
Yeah. Is that they represent different things to different people's narratives or the way that they want to believe it or perceive it? But do you know something, Steve? We've got 5 minutes. It's flown. It's absolutely flown, and I could have talked for another half an hour about shadow people because it fascinates me. But go on, Les.
Okay, well, we might need a little bit of a backstory telling on this one, Steve. But the question is from Steve Collin. Steve, did you ever find out whether Becky was benevolent or not when you were in Ireland at Lisheen House with Barry Fitzgerald?
No, I spent over 10 years working alongside Don Phillips and Becky. You know, you have to draw on your own conclusion. I wouldn't be fair to turn around and say I think it's this or that. The problem that we have today is symbolism and terminology and belief systems. You know, everything's a demon, you know, but do you know what people talk about possession? But, you know, can people not be possessed by things of neutral or even positive things? Well, if they're guided by positive things, they're going to call it a spirit guide or whatever. Do people question spirit guides? Bloody too right, they should. When we did investigations with SCP, we picked out 20 people that had the most relevant experiences with spirit guides, and we went through a survey with them. We asked them the most important questions, because by this time they've been well acquainted. They've been communicating with their spirit guides for a number of years. Spirit guides always tell stories, and they've told them, I used to work there, I used to live here, this is what my name was. So when we checked into doing the hefty amount of research behind the 20, not one of them was told the truth. Not one. Right now, they thought this isn't good when we told them results of the research, and we asked them, well, will you, next time we communicate with your spirit guides, ask them or her or it or whatever, why are you not giving the truth? Why did you have to deceive me? Why did you not tell me, you know, the truth? And they did. And what was interesting, they all came back with the same response, and it was, well, do you want to continue with your communications? Yeah. Or do you just want to ask me questions, you know? So basically it was saying like, well, you either want to know these answers or you just, you know, and the communications to stop, or do you want the communications to carry on? And they all went for it. They all said, oh, no, I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose the spirit guide. No, I won't ask any more questions. I'll just accept it. So they're not what they say they are. It doesn't mean they're bad. You know, because sometimes go, oh, well, if it's lying, it's bad, it's this, that, and you know, but do they have a right to not tell us? Well, yes, they do. They don't have to tell us who they are if they don't want to, you know, and the deception lies in the fact that they weren't who they said they were. And this is the same thing we've got with Becky. You know, the fact is that Becky was picked up in a location which is probably one of the most traumatic hauntings I've been involved in Leicester. It was very, very bad, but then it was invocated, so it wasn't a very good situation, and all hell was breaking loose there. That's where Becky turned up. on the scene, and there is an attachment there with Don, and been so ever since. She resides with him, or even inside him, you could say. So people are bound to say, well, it's a possession of source. Well, yeah, I'm not going to argue against that. But in 10, 11 years I've worked with Don, I've never seen anything bad, that he's been involved in and come from this. But then, there are people say, oh, well, they can wait forever and take a pound of flesh. Well, we don't know. It's speculative at best.
Mm.
The problem is, when we talk about possession, if you look through the research about demonic possession, well, it's not demon, it's daemon. But if you research what that means, it's talking just generally about some form of existence or intelligence or spiritual or whatever that is in communicating with you. So there's nothing there to say, and it's problematic. I would say yes, I'm curious and cautious, but at the same time I'm not seeing anything develop which I would say yes, it's representative of something demonic.
Steve, time's beat us tonight, as Paul said earlier. It's flew by, but obviously if you can quickly talk, I don't know, for about 30 seconds on some of the speakers that we got on Saturday's conference.
Yeah, the Awakening Conference that's taking place. It's a mini con, actually. It's not one of the main ones. It's one of our smaller events, but of course it's a full day on, and we built this particular event around the quality of the information that's being shared, rather than just same old people talking about the same old thing. We've gone past that. We're beyond that point now. We want to learn more. We want to figure things out. We want to try and advance the subjects and understanding of it. And that's what it's all about. So it's all about quality information. And some of the latest stuff. So it's pretty much jam-packed, full on all day, which is going to be taking place in Oldham on Saturday, the 17th of May. So we're looking forward to it.
And yeah, I believe you sold out, Steve, are you?
We have sold out. We're sold out.
I'm saying that just in case anybody thinks, oh, I'll come along.
We're sold out. Yeah, I mean, absolutely jam-packed it. And I was surprised that it went so fast, to be honest with you. And it didn't really have to advertise too much. I think, what, people are ready for a bit of a change and want to know what's going on in the world. Because what people tend to do is that they're watching YouTube, they're listening about all the hype and stuff coming out from the US. Most of it is trash, be honest with you. And you're getting wrapped up with the UAP hearings, he said, she said, he said, and it's a spin wheel and profiteerings and all sorts of different things going on there. And I just think, look, do you know what? We need a bit of common sense. And the UK has some great common sense guys in the subject, which aren't afraid to ask questions. And we want some new materials, and that's what the way forward, I suppose.
Okay, well, we're gonna cut you short on that one, Steve, because Paul, quickly.
Oh yeah, the Truth Proof books, truthproof.uk. If you want the books in paperback form, if you're getting them overseas, please go to the Amazon link. We can use global shipping. I'll do it quick. If you want the DVD, the Wolflands DVD, that's available on Amazon Prime as download, or you can buy the hard copies, truthproof.uk. Same thing with the overseas orders. The UK shipping link from eBay, and also they're available on Amazon Kindle. Thank you.
And I've got to apologize that I didn't get all the questions out tonight. There was lots and lots of questions. We could have done another 2 hours on that one.
It's just easy with Steve. I love it. I just sit here and I'm thinking, I just make little notes, but I think I haven't had to use any of this. It's great. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I enjoy it.
And thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, and with a good following wind and the call of the Banshee, we'll probably see you all on Sunday evening.
We will do, and we'll give you a breakdown of the conference.
And before then, anybody who's turning up at the show, we can't wait to meet you.
Yeah, we'll see you there. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you.
Good night.
Okay. Good night.